What is up, you guys? We're back at it again with another video. Let's just get straight into it. It's been like 3 months and I've been away from YouTube and even my other social medias, and I've been going through a lot of changes, but that means I also got a lot of stories, and this is gonna be fire, So for those who don't know me, I'm King Cash, and I specialize in astral projection, galactic federation, and demon hunting. Now, I love demon hunting. I came across demon hunting about a year ago. And what's interesting was that as I was evolving and getting into myself, I would have a lot of dark being attacks on me. And I didn't understand why. It felt really weird and it was kind of annoying. But no matter what, I would try and run from it, but they would just keep coming. And so anytime I was evolving or getting to where I want to be, there'd be dark beings coming and sneaking in and trying to always attack me. And it got annoying. Like, I would have succubus. I still have this one succubus. We're going to talk about all these things, okay? My story is very similar to like Octavia in the 100. If you guys don't know who she is, basically like a girl who went through a lot of trauma in her childhood, and then when she was sent to Earth or down to the ground, then she stepped into like this warrior mode. And then when she tried to get away from it, it's like she kept being called to it again. And then she realized, this is who I am. And it was the same thing for me. People would always say, you know, don't demon hunt, don't search them out, or don't fight them all the time. That's so bad, it's so negative. But then I started getting pushed toward it more and more and more universally. And the more I tried to run from it, I spent a while trying to run from it, and I ended up just being called back to it. So it got to the point where I said, you know what? This is who I am. And nobody really talks about it a lot on social media. And it's time that I talk about it on social media. You guys may notice I talk a lot about demon hunting and traveling the astral and fighting dark beings. That is just who I am. This mission I'm going to tell y'all about happened about a month ago. This one happened in the physical. I call this one National Mushroom Day because everybody was on mushrooms for some reason this day, bro. I'm still like, what the hell, dude? It started out with me going to the gym. Now, there's a bunch of these kids I mentor, and one of them came up to me and he was like, yo, let's link. We're going to do mushrooms later. And I was like, okay, cool. And right away, the Galactic Federation is like, you're going to have a mission. That's a mission. And I was already like, let's go, boys, right? You know, I'm hyped for that. They call me up and it's later at night. It's about in the evening. And then I meet up with them and they were like, oh, do mushrooms with us. And, you know, I'm not going to do a whole bunch. And I've already done training to be on mushrooms. So I started doing mushrooms as training, the Federation called it. And now I see it wasn't just to help me awaken, but it was while I'm doing missions to be able to be on mushrooms and still be focused on my mission. I thought it was crazy because then I was doing mushrooms with them and I was able to fully be present and have my abilities where they were more heightened at that time as well, and still be interactive with them, not focus on like, oh, I'm on mushrooms, oh, it's crazy. I was already kind of like used to it from the training. I did one mushroom so that I could be on the same wavelength as them, and then they did a whole bunch. And the one kid I've been with for a while is really, really smart, and he brought his friends, and his friends were always hearing about him getting into spirituality and getting into business and all of that stuff. So he was like, can you show them that spirituality is real? And he wanted me to show them. And I started going into a reading with them. And they were like, how the fuck do you know that? How do you know that? And I was like, all right, so this is obviously their introduction into how real spirituality is. So I noticed for each of the kids, I was there for a different reason. We're just walking around, we're talking about consciousness, spirituality, whatever. And the one guy had a lot of questions, we're getting into it. We're walking around town, it's at night, and then we go to the kid's house. So I'm hanging out with them in the backyard for a little bit. It was maybe about 10-15 minutes, and then I was like, all right, guys. The Federation's like, all right, next, time to go. Your time with them is done. So I was like, all right, guys, time for me to go, and I'll talk to you guys later. You know, you guys can message me if anything again. I'm walking home, and I'm taking the track route. So I'm going home, and then I'm going through the track to go home. As I'm walking, it looks like two kids are laying down on the pavement, like on the track. And they're laying down looking at the stars. And I walked up, and it was this one kid that I know, and then another guy that I'm not so acquainted with. I walk up, and they're like, hey, they call me Vinny around here. They're like, hey, Vinny. And I was like, whoa, what are y'all doing? So I sat there watching the stars with them for a little bit. And what are the odds these guys are on mushrooms, dude? These guys are so high on mushrooms, they could barely like understand the sentence I was saying. But what was interesting was their energy was so open. It was so vulnerable. And as spiritual people, we're used to being like that, very open. We feel everything. But when you're not spiritually aware and you're open like that, it could cause problems. It could cause dark beings to use that as a tactic to get you easier. And it could also make you susceptible to other people's energies and just make you susceptible mentally. So your mind is so malleable that if a dark being were to just come up, it would basically infiltrate you, and then it would stick to you. So I noticed that. I was like, whoa, these guys are really vulnerable. But I didn't think about that just yet. I was just like, wow, these guys are really open and don't even understand they're open. So Federation's like, this is a mission. I was like, lit, okay, dude, right? I was getting lit. I laid there with them and I started talking. We're just talking. The one was a little more spiritually aware than the other one. But this guy was very high schoolish, I should say. Just very focused on the physical. I started getting deep with this guy because I was like, okay, I guess this is a mission, and some of my missions are just talking with the person. So I sat there and I was like, all right, let me engage. So I started getting deep with the guy, talking about a little bit of philosophical stuff. I was like, why are we fighting in life when all we gotta do is relax and stuff like that? And he was like, man, that's too deep for me right now. And they were high as hell. So that was way too deep for them, but that was like kind of normal aspects for spiritual people like us. I rolled my eyes so hard. I was like, oh my God. I asked the Federation, I'm like, what am I here for? Because these guys are not open to anything deep. What the hell am I here for? So I was about to leave, but they said, don't worry. You are going to see why you're here. So I was like, okay. So I stayed a bit, and then I was like, all right, man, I'm going to go for a walk. And I started getting up, and they were following me. And they were like, Cash looks like he knows where he's going. Let's just follow him. And then I looked up. I was like, okay, this is it, right? So they're just following me, and they don't even know where they're going. They're just laughing and acting goofy or whatever. And I'm sitting there thinking, okay, where am I going to take these guys? So we started walking. As I'm walking toward this area, there's a forest and then a park. And while I'm looking at the forest, I could see like these gray shadows running back and forth. I tried to take a picture or video of it and I couldn't. I realized also that the mushrooms are still in place, so my clairvoyance was more clear than usual. You know, like mannequins when they're just completely gray? It looked like those. They were just like running. And so I could see them running, and I asked the guys, I'm like, do y'all see that? And I'm starting to understand that they're spirits. So I was like, do y'all see that? And they were like, no, what are you talking about? I'm like, you don't see those, like, it looks like people running? And they're like, nah, I think those are just the trees. And I was like, those ain't just no trees. Those ain't just no trees. And I walked them to the park, and I'm like, all right, this is where we're going to stay. So I'm sitting on top of the park, and these two guys are sitting at the bottom of the park. And they're just acting a fool, right? They're just like, yo, man, you see that light? That light looked like a butterfly, dude. And they're just chatting a bunch of foolishness. I'm rolling my eyes. I'm like, oh, my God. It's kind of funny just watching them, like, totally out of it and vulnerable. It was just hilarious. And I started realizing I could feel like something wasn't right. So I stood there and I started analyzing. I realized I was almost there as like a scout to protect them while they're on this mushroom trip. So I realized I was like a trip advisor. So I'm sitting there and I'm literally looking, and then I could see the gray or these like dark shadows running back and forth. And I was like, okay, the demons are here. And then the kids were like, it feels like people are around us, dude. It feels like people are around us. And the guy's like, yeah, dude. And then they kept talking foolishness. And I was like, oh, they feel it. So I'm looking, and these demons are coming out the woodworks. Remember, it's nighttime as well. And they're surrounding the park. So I'm standing at the top of the park and the guys are here and I'm looking around and the demons are surrounding. And I look at them and I'm like, oh, I see why I was here, right? The one demon in the corner goes, oh, it's Cash. And I look and I was like, wait, you know who I am already? And I've noticed this for a while, is that any mission I go on that I always talk about too, you guys notice these demons already know who I am. So I didn't ask, I was just like, in my head, I'm like, they already know who I am. So I said, yup, I'm here again and you're not gonna mess with these guys, bro. And he's like, we're gonna see about that. And of course they're angry. And they're swarming. There's like 20 of them surrounding the park. They're like, we'll see about that. And I smiled. I was like, all right, let's do it. I closed my eyes and I instantly like astral projected out of my body. And I got my light sword out. And you know my signature move, I started with the right? And they were battling me. Like one of them hung on my back. And I went like this and I went, and so they started like disappearing, and the ones that got sliced but didn't like die were just like hurt, and they're like, oh, and they started going away, so their energy was like impacted by my light sword. And so of course then I started seeing them while I'm fighting the ones over here. They're running at the kids, and I said, nice try. People think fighting demons sounds easy. It's not. The darkness, man, it was like enclosing. And so I started going. And then I started seeing they were dying down. There were 7 left, but they could not, like, they were like, all right, we can't do this one. So they looked over and they went like this and they started like backing up into the bushes. In my head, I was like, okay, I see they were here. They were sent to get these guys, like these guys that were on the mushrooms because they were susceptible. And I was like, oh my God. So then they backed up and they ran away. They looked at me like angrily, like, we're going to get you. We're going to find a way to get you. And I said, okay, well, we'll see about that. And then they ran off. And of course, after that, everything was good. The guys were acting a fool again, doing whatever. And then I sat there and I was like, okay, they're gone. And I was analyzing them. I'm like, are they going to come back? A few of them came back to see if I left, but I didn't. So I realized, okay, they're waiting for me to leave to attack these guys. And so I stayed with those kids for a while. After I was like, all right, guys, let's get out of here. So I walked them away back to the track, away from the forest. And then they were like, all right, we're going to go home now. The one kid was going to go home. So the one kid went home. And then I walked the other kid that was a little more spiritual. I walked him home. After all that, they weren't fully aware of what I did. But they like kind of felt it. They felt it around them. Especially when the darkness was enclosing. They mistaked it for just like it was dark outside and they were thinking, oh, maybe I'm just feeling the darkness surrounding me. But everybody there felt it like enclosing. So after all that, everything was good. But those demons, man, like energetically, I was like, oh. And I could feel like almost like the demon scratches on my back. It was kind of hard to explain. That's the only way I could explain it. And so I realized my astral body was a little bit damaged from it. But it was okay because I just went home and I could shower, wash off all the energy, meditate, recollect myself again, rebuild my astral body. Oh yeah, one of them tried to follow me home, but I felt it and I was like, nah. But I wasn't fully aware. I could feel it, but I wasn't fully sure. So I went back in the house and then it couldn't enter the shield around the house. So it just like left. But I could feel it on my back, the scratches. So then I realized one tried to follow the kid I was walking home. And so I made sure none were going to follow him. But the whole idea of them planning to attack these kids, and I was sent there by the Federation to stop them, it made me aware more of how much mushrooms are divine. Now, I always talked about before how divine mushrooms are and how they open you up to the astral and they allow you to be more connected. But if you are just doing them for fun, that's the worst thing you could do, is just do them for amusement. Like, you know, people do them at parties. That's what could mess you up. So I realized this wasn't just the one mission that I went on where mushrooms were involved, but there was many where kids were doing mushrooms and I happened to be there to stop any darkness from attacking them while they were on mushrooms. So then I started concluding that mushrooms are extremely divine, as we know, but they also make you susceptible, extremely susceptible in a bad way if you are not spiritually attuned. That was really it for this day. I got lots more stories, lots more stories. So this was just one of them. I hope you guys enjoyed this. And if you are someone who's attracted to demon hunting, or you want to just learn about it and learn about dark beings or whatnot, that's what I specialize in. I love to. And I was actually afraid to talk about demon hunting a lot, but now I realized more that this is who I am and this is what I gotta talk about. So I love you guys so much. We're gonna be making lots more about these, and I'll see you later. Peace out. Bye.